Mr. President, I want to thank my distinguished colleague for leading this fight. He has been leading it for years now. It's such a no-brainer. It's amazing to me that we even have to go through this again. But I want to thank him for yielding to me, and I'd like to associate myself with many of the persuasive arguments that have been made here by my colleagues, both Democrat and Republican, urging the speedy passage of this legislation. To me, the decision to approve this pipeline is an obvious one for a host of reasons. It will support more than 42,000 good-paying jobs. I didn't quite get what the Assistant Minority Leader was saying here today on how few jobs it creates. It actually will support more than 42,000 good-paying jobs during its construction phase. It will contribute more than $3.4 billion to our gross domestic product. It will aid in the goal of North American energy independence. And as the State Department's environmental impact statement found, building the Keystone XL Pipeline will actually be better for the environment than not building it. The energy resources that the Canadians produce will reach the market regardless of whether this pipeline is built. And Keystone XL is by far the safest, the cleanest, and the most efficient means of doing so. What are the arguments against it, my gosh, other than phony environmental arguments? Mr. President, that was the State Department, controlled by them. Mr. President, as a common-sense bipartisan jobs and an infrastructure measure, this bill is exactly the sort of legislation that the Senate should be considering as its first order of business in this new Congress. But it should not have to be. The story here is about more than a single pipeline, no matter how many jobs its construction will create, no matter how important it is for our energy independence, and no matter how environmentally sound it is. This is a story about a regulatory process that is clearly broken. This is a story about special interests manipulating the bureaucracy to muck up the process that should be very simple and uncontroversial. And this is a story about just one of many examples of tragically missed opportunities to create good-paying jobs and provide relief for household budgets across the country. Mr. President, the application for approval of the Keystone XL Pipeline was first filed in September of 2008, more than 6 years ago. United States senators have served more than a full term during that particular time. Children born after the application was filed are now in first grade. The notion that any infrastructure project should be held up for such a long period is disturbing, not just to me, but I think to anybody who carefully looks at this. But the delay of Keystone XL is even worse. Given the strong and well-documented economic and environmental case for the pipeline, Keystone is the sort of a project that should have been quickly and easily approved for construction. But for some committed environmentalists inside and outside the Obama administration, common sense and balanced consideration of the facts no longer matter. Instead, to them, the simple pipeline has become a political symbol, regardless of what the science tells us. And they have directed their ample energies at throwing up every procedural roadblock imaginable to the approval of the pipeline. As a result, this project has endured delay after delay after delay. Mr. President, over the past few years, the American people have rightly developed the impression that Washington is broken. There can be no better example of the consequence of this dysfunction than the holdup of the Keystone XL Pipeline sitting in bureaucratic purgatory. When a project such as this, which is good for jobs, good for families budgets, gets bogged down in the Obama administration's red tape, it is absolutely the responsibility of the Congress to act. Unfortunately, for years, the Senate became a place where good ideas like approving Keystone XL came to die, where control of the calendar and the amendment process prevented the consideration of so many good bipartisan issues and ideas. Not only was the administrative process broken, but the Senate was also paralyzed and unable to step in and fix it. Mr. President, by taking up this important bill as our first matter of consideration in this new Congress, we are taking steps to restore the Senate to the great legislative body it was meant to be. It is meant to be. The place where senators work across the aisle to meet the needs of the American people. By coming together to propose a common sense solution to get back on track this project that has become such a symbol of what's wrong with Washington, my friends from North Dakota and West Virginia are demonstrating exactly the sort of thoughtful, inclusive, and bipartisan leadership that the American people have been demanding as they've watched this greatest deliberative body in the world become the laughing stock of the world because we haven't gotten very much done. We haven't gotten very much done because of the way it's been run over the last number of years. It is my sincere hope that we move quickly and desperately and deliberately to approve this measure, and that we soon begin considering serious regulatory reform to prevent the sort of abuses that we have seen bedevil the Keystone XL project. The American people deserve an efficient and effective regulatory process that works for them, and it is time for the Senate to deliver. Having said these few words, I want to personally thank my distinguished colleagues from North Dakota and my colleagues from West Virginia for the leadership that they've provided on this issue. Senator Hoeven is former governor. He knows what he's talking about. He's one of the most reasonable, decent, honorable people in this body. He has shown a great willingness to work with both sides. He has continued to fight for this, even though it's been uphill the last 6 years, better than 6 years. He's continued to fight for it because it's right. It's the right thing to do. And it's in our best interest to do it, and to do it now. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.